committee to order. We have a quorum, Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Rosenthal, Mr. Smith, myself, Bernard Parks, as chair. I'd like to go through the agenda for first 5 items will be in closed session. If I can get my colleagues to agree on consent items 7, 8, 10, 11, and 14.
And excuse me, Chairman Parks, Councilman Parks,
Yeah.
on item number 14,
Yeah.
the CAO recommended, stated that the city attorney ordinances would come forward under separate cover, but the city attorney has already submitted those to the city clerk.
Okay.
And would like those approved at this time as well.
This is a routine
Yes,
process.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. But the ordinances are already at the city clerk.
yes, they are.
I had some questions on 10, so if we could call that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on the consent items. We can go 7, 8, 11, and 14. Everybody agree on those?
7, 8, 11, and 14?
Yes. Okay. On item 7, we would approve the city attorney report, and also it appears we need to have a placeholder because this needs to be before council as soon as possible. Okay. And then on 8, we approve the city attorney's recommendation, and I'd like to ask for the city attorney to provide the clerk with the cost of those contracts so that we'd have some idea of what those contracts will cost as they move forward. And then on item 10, we would approve the motion as amended by the Board of Public Works, but also we'd ask that we get some, if we can do it by the time it comes to council, is that some idea as to the amount of money that's been donated to date for this initiative, and how much, if it has been expended on this project. So if we can ask those 2 questions to avoid a report back. 11, we'll approve the CLA recommendation, and 14, we'll approve the CAO recommendations.
Mr. Parks, and the ordinances.
And the ordinance. Okay. Now, we've not seen the ordinance, but they've already been transmitted on that, so,
Yes, and the amounts in the ordinances are the same as the ones stated in the report.
okay. So we'll move all of that forward. Okay, so we're going to go in closed session on items 1 through 5. We'll return on items 6, 9, 10, 12, and 13. And we have one public comment card on 6, so when we get back. this year are the properties that we start the sale process in this year, and they may go beyond this year, as to really get the clarity before we move forward. Maybe Lynn.
Were you anticipating Bethune?
Bethune is already being sold to CRA on Vermont, so that we can build the new library on Western.
Yeah, and our 3 were sold too, to the Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah, we have 2 or 3
Which
libraries in order to
now
fund
is
the
working.
new library. But it went to CRA.
Like, yeah, I'm just not sure. if
That's the list
accurate.
of all proposed,
Yeah.
all surplus property
Yeah.
proposed for this fiscal.
My recollection, I'm Lynn Ozawa from the CLA. My recollection was that it was true there was a list of various surplus properties that had been declared surplus at the point the budget was discussed. And there was a set amount that was included in the budget that we needed in order to balance. However, I believe in Exhibit H of the proposed budget, where the instruction to the city attorney was to prepare the ordinance, may not have been as specific to say, include these surplus properties on this list. I think it was more general in that instruction, but the discussion that you had included an overview of that list of properties that had been declared surplus at that point. So I think that, there may have been a disconnect between the Exhibit H instruction and what your council discussed.
Would the easiest way to do this just say, let's not put a dollar amount on how much it's going to be this year, and just establish a policy on all those that go forward? Because our policy is anyway, when a property is declared surplus by any department of the city, other departments get the first look at it, and then other government agencies get a look at it, and then it goes to the public. So assuming that my Safe Center, which is going to be approved this week, is pulling that one off the list, his housing project gets it pulled off the list before it ever gets to the list, whatever's left and gets sold. But I hate putting a dollar amount on it, because in this marketplace, I think we'll take whatever we can get if we have to sell, we have to sell this year.
And in fact, the ordinance does not refer to a dollar amount.
Okay.
It simply says the sales of surplus properties that are completed between July 1 of this year.
But did we put that in the budget in any way?
Yes, let me
That's
just
the
state
problem.
that the budget,
Right.
Councilman Parks is correct. There's a total amount of $22.15 million that we budgeted for sale of surplus property.
So we need to get that amount or some other surplus in another revenue category in order to make up
balance.
the difference.
Yeah, well, the balance.
But I don't think that's what
You ain't gonna
the
get it.
council believed we adopted in the budget. I think the council believed we adopted those projects or those
Minus.
properties that were in there minus what Mr. Rosendall's, amendments as part of the budget, and did not, because there's several, I don't think most of the council members have probably seen this list. They probably know their surplus property, but we're not sure that that was going to be part of, because they might have things that they have plans for, or other, avenues. So-
Well, and in fact, as you well know, often properties that are up for sale won't sell within the time frame that it is anticipated, and some of those that are listed may not sell until next fiscal year. So
I have one that might.
we certainly didn't have that understanding when we received the instruction,
Yeah.
which
wasn't
came from
blaming you,
Exhibit
but I'm
H.
saying, yeah, that, lots of things, I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't have the council take an action that says it's went into the general fund and we think it should go to the council members' area or what they had planned, but I think it's just a little, it's not exactly what had been originally discussed. How do you want to handle this, Mr. Parks?
Let me just ask on this, because, again, if this comes to council and people aren't aware of it, I think we may need to just hold this for a second and see if we can get the CLA-CAO to meet with the affected council officers to know if they know what's on the list, because if this is going to go forward.
We'd be happy to put out a memo laying out what the discussion has been in your committee to make sure that they're aware, and we'll attach the list.
Okay.
And if
And I
you-
think that would make
Yeah,
more
I think, so.
clarity.
I mean, yeah, I do think actually sitting down with their staff is important, and
Yes, we can do that too.
memo.
And depending on the time that will take, we can bring back a revised ordinance addressing the Potrero Canyon and other funds to committee at that same time. So, I don't know, a couple of weeks or whatever it might be.
Let me ask you this, too, is that as we go forward, and this is delayed a little while, would there be a retroactive in the sense of July 1st, or because you're losing
Yes,
money as we go forward?
the ordinance specifies that all sales as of July, that are completed as of July 1st of this year
Okay.
going forward. So yes, it does have that effect.
Very good, all right. Well, let's do this. How long do you think it takes to deal with the different offices so that they're not surprised as to what's on there?
We'll try to do it within the next week.
Okay. So if we would give you, when's our next meeting? Is that
The 11th,
the 11th?
and then after that is recess. We'll come
Okay, if we can do it before the recess, can we get it done by the 11th?
I think we can,
Okay.
we'll make
Let's put it on
every
for the
attempt to
11th
do that.
in the sense of
You know,
before
1
we...
week.
Okay. All right, we'll hold on to that for 1 week. Get that clarity.
But you are clear about mature opinion, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, George.
Thank you.
Okay, next is item number 9, which is City Treasurer's Investment and Cash Management Report for the month ending April 30th, 2008.
Yeah, I didn't know how big of it was, such a group of properties, but that's what confused me when they said this year, you're talking about starting and ending. Then I got this list, and it's like, this is a big one, and I remembered it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Joya DeVore, City Treasurer, with me, Hal Nottreeper, Chief Investment Officer. And as usual, since the report is dated, we'll be happy to address any questions you may have, but want to bring you up to date with what's happening in the market right now in our approach.
We'd like to update, and also if you can clarify for us what it means to us on the recent, appears downgrading for our ratings, and how that impacts us.
I'm sorry, the downgrade of,
We understood that Moody just recently revised the city's rating, in the sense of,
I am not familiar with that. It may be our debt rating, that would be the CAO. The Treasurer still has a AAA rating for the investment portfolios.
we'll find out. All right, why don't you give us the most update we have?
Where we did see, well, first we are continuing our conservative approach to investing. The impact of that and what you'll see over the next couple of months may be a slight underperformance of the benchmark because we're not taking the chances that some of the benchmark companies are. So it's not a loss of money, it's just a slight underperformance of the benchmark. Some recent activities, as you may have heard, there are some of the insurers that have been downgraded. One was MBIA, which provided a backstop to some of our guaranteed investment contracts. In our contracts, we had some provisions that provided for immediate collateralization if there was a downgrade. We have recently completed all those new agreements, and so all of our deposits are collateralized and held by an independent third party, so our funds are protected in that regard. We ended the year slightly better than we had estimated. We won't know the exact number until the controller finalizes and closes the books for fiscal year 2008, but we're anticipating a slight overperformance in our revenue numbers. Again, I think it's a tribute to the gentleman sitting to my left and his staff who have really taken a hard look, and this group that approved Bond Edge, and so we were able to constantly analyze our investments on a daily basis. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hal for some more specifics on the portfolio.
Yeah, I'll just briefly mention that the second quarter, we experienced a lot of economic uncertainty, and that translated into a fair amount of uncertainty within the fixed income markets, the bond markets, and the cash markets. As Joya mentioned, we overall for the second quarter were able to essentially match the overall benchmark, although we had 1 month where we actually lagged the benchmark a little bit. But overall, things have gone very well for the treasurer's pool during 0708.
If I could ask you just a quick question. If I was just a regular person watching this or listening to this on council phone and I cared about my own savings, could you tell us what your strategy was that has preserved our city's monies?
Yes. We've just been very, very diligent about managing the risk of the treasurer's pool. And we've been very, very cognizant of the characteristic of our benchmark, which for the reserve portfolio is the Lehman, the 1 to 5 year. We've been very careful about measuring credit risk, very careful about measuring interest rate risk, and thirdly, we've also been very careful about measuring any callability risk that might exist in the portfolio to, of course, best serve the city.
And I would add one more risk that we pay attention to, and that's headline risk. Sometimes the media will report on a company, an issue, a trend, and we have to see how that news may or may not impact our portfolio. So we may not buy something because of that company or that manager or a certain economic trend, or we may do just the opposite for that same reason. But we do assess the portfolio every single day, and that has been the difference, I think, in the last 5 years before we had the tools to do so.
So you can basically buy and sell stuff is what you're saying you're doing.
We are, yes.
Following a conservative portfolio.
Very conservative.
Very low risk. Yeah.
I'm very impressed.
There's always been, yeah.
Let me ask you, is there anything specific that happened that caused us to divest ourselves from Lehman stock or move in another direction? Is that?
Yes, Lehman Brothers was in the portfolio. It's no longer in the portfolio. One of the benefits of Bond Edge that Council approved is a feature that allows us to quantify the probability of default of various issuers, including Lehman. We began to see some yellow flags with Lehman in terms of a potential for a probability of default, and took appropriate action to sell Lehman Brothers holdings from the portfolio.
And then what can we get something?
Yeah, I wanted to just expand on that. It's not just Lehman. As you may have recalled last fall, we talked about our concern with the financial services market in general. And what we did at that time, we started selectively divesting ourselves where we saw the yellow flags. And only now are we selectively picking up some of those financial services companies.
Okay. And then what are some of the new services that we will get from changing banks as it relates to managing our financials?
I'm very excited, not necessarily new, but enhanced services that focus on technology. What we're doing just in general, instead of just replacing a financial institution, we're taking the opportunity to actually go into every single department and assess their business processes. And we're doing this as a joint effort between the bank and the department. We're working with the department to do that. We are going to be leveraging technology. We have discovered that there's some processes that the city has done for the last 30 or 40 years without change. And what you'll see is enhanced management reporting. That's going to be one of the chief improvements, more timely reporting. Frankly, there's going to be better internal controls because as we went through the assessment process, we found reconciliation upon manual reconciliation upon manual reconciliation, and so on and so on. We're going to be using technology to do that and close some possible financial vulnerabilities. It's going to allow us also to protect our information. One of the chief changes you'll see is everyone in the world has the city's general bank account number. We're setting up a structure where money can come in, but the only place it can go is to an approved disbursement account, city disbursement account. And so there won't be an account number that people can use to pay their bills, as we've discovered has happened in the past.
In the past, like recent past, or?
No, like in a couple of years past, we worked very closely with the Controller's Department to enforce some of our current policies. There was an instance where a department was not doing monthly reconciliations, and some months later, we found that someone had gotten hold of the account number for that department and was using it on the IVR services to pay their utility bills. We were able to recover with the assistance of the financial institution the majority of those funds.
And how, I know you've changed banks, now with Wachovia and Wells, how has that changed? I mean, you just indicated that it's giving you an opportunity to look, but it's a big change because we had the previous bank for many years.
25 years about. There has been no change made at this second. We thought it was very important to go in and assess the business processes first versus just replacing what we already had. We will be phasing in departments over the next year as we complete the assessments and the departments buy off on these are the kinds of services they need. We have a whole process for opening a Wachovia account for that department, making the department accountable for that reconciliation, and phasing out the former financial institution services as we test the new relationship.
We'll move that item. Thank you.
Thank you very
Hats off
much.
for your good work. Congratulations, yeah.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Last is our items numbers 12 and 13. Both were continued from the July 28th meeting. Item number 12 is a controller memorandum dated June 12th, 2008, relative to the potential cancellation of encumbrances. Item number 13 is a CAO report relative to the proposed 2008-09 state budget and potential city impacts.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Lamb from the Controller. We have substantially closed the books, and the reserve fund, emergency reserve, is $125 million, which is as budgeted. The contingency reserve at this point is $41 million, which is $26 million below the adopted budget. There are two reasons for that. One is the budget assumes a $15 million appropriation from the general fund to the reserve fund. We will make that appropriation in January when we go from a cash flow negative situation to a cash flow positive situation. Up until then, we're spending more, we're borrowing money from various funds and from tax and revenue anticipation notes to meet city expenditures. The other item is the reserve fund is down $11 million because of reduced reversions to the reserve fund. That is reflective of the problems we had last year. One final thing I would like to point out, I'd like to thank the committee and the departments and the mayor for taking the situation seriously last year because we ended up with a $100 million uncommitted balance where the expenditures and encumbrances were $100 million below appropriations. However, we only had $29.8 million of cash. So if departments had expended up to their appropriation authority, we would have been short by about $70 million.
So you're saying that is that caused by the managed hiring?
I think it's a combination of the fact that the mayor and the controller sent letters to departments saying that be careful with your encumbrances and your year-end expenditures. I think there was the managed hiring program. I think the emphasis that the committee placed upon the budget during the year with departments coming in and the council. So I think it was a combination of everything. Had the departments not responded, we could have been out $70 million.
Very good. Comments from the CEO?
Not on that
On the-
particular item for me.
Well, we have someone here, Liz Lee from the CAO, to speak on the reserve fund.
So just before Bill finishes, so it's 11 million, not 10 million? Is that the kind of final?
Yes.
So it's 11 million
Right.
that we have to find, well, 11 million that we aren't able to balance last year's budget, so will come out of this year's reserve budget.
Correct.
And when you talked about the contingency fund?
The
You said that
contingency
was-
reserve.
Yeah, contingency reserve. You said that was down,
That's down 26, the two components, because we won't make the $15 million appropriation from the general fund until January, when we actually have more cash coming in than we have expenditures going out.
so that's the cause of the 26,
Right, those two.
those two combined, okay.
Elizabeth Lee of the CAO's office. Essentially, if we count the 14.8 million that's going to come into the reserve fund from the general fund, we will end the year, start the year with about 181.3 million, which is approximately 3.98% of the general fund budget. So bottom line is we are 11.4 million below budget.
Anything? No. Okay. Now, did we cover everything? Anybody got anything else? We're also pending this same information before council. I think we've still continued it. Is that right?
Yes, we did, the next meeting.
So we'll receive and file these two reports and basically continue to monitor this at the council. Okay? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Parks, I don't believe the committee took an action on number 10.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're just getting back to. Thank you. I thought we had, but then we're back.
Thank you.
Number 10.
And that concludes today's agenda.
We had number 10.
Oh, 10,
Yeah, we originally said consent, but Mr. Smith had some questions on it, so we pulled it to the regular agenda.
Oh, all right. Takes us to item number 10, which is a motion from Labange Han relative to authorizing the Executive Director of Million Trees LA and the President of the Board of Public Works to accept donations on behalf of the city for the MTLA initiative. Staff.
Nobody? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? Anyone?
Is anyone in the hallway?
Call down?
Okay, why don't we continue that, because we may have confused them when we...
We do have a placeholder for tomorrow's council on this item.
Oh, we do?
Okay, well, my concern was, we're asking Board of Public Works to kind of become fundraisers, which has been a thing we've really avoided over the years because of the appearance of conflict of interest that they have in giving out big contracts over there. While the council has somewhat that same conflict of interest, I think it removes it from the body that actually awards contracts. And we've always been very careful not to put them in that function. And I think that it would be better served by the mayor's staff continue to do this, let them do the fundraising, although there's a relationship there as well as far as contracts go. It's one step removed from the actual voting group that does the contracts. So I was just concerned about having Board of Public Works become a fundraising agency to do this initiative, which I'm not so sure has been all that successful anyway, but
And I wasn't sure if it was that they will be the recipient of the funds or they're actually going to do the fundraising. It wasn't clear.
and that's, as I look at it, it says the Board of Public Works will be assisting the mayor's office in the initiative and shall, among other things, important tasks, assist the mayor,
And
coordinate
identifying a number of
efforts.
public and private
Right.
resources.
So that kind of, I would rather them just say, we'll accept the money when you raise it to go toward this project, but let you guys raise it. Yeah.
Should we just,
So what is the timeline that it has to go to council tomorrow? Is there a pending contribution?
No. It went to Public Works first. There was a request for a placeholder for tomorrow's agenda.
should we just continue it?
Well, we continue it on council or send it back to committee.
Or just continue, yeah.
Or continue it or send it back, either one. And then there's another concern, and Nicole just reminded me of, that is, it's also commingling money in the trust fund, where we make a lot of loans and move money around a lot, and I'm not so sure we want to be commingling those kind of funds. So I think it needs just more definition. So if we could just take,
Would we be sending it to council without a recommendation?
I think maybe the recommendation ought to be it comes back here.
thing is, if there's nothing pending, why don't we basically...
It's not an urgency, there's
yeah,
nothing that I
why-
know
Why don't we
urgent
just
about it.
hold it and see if we get the CAO, CLA to meet with Mr. Labange and find out what the intent is, and then find out on the issues of Mr. Smith's concerns as to this commingling of money and how, if they're going to be, is there a separation between the fundraising and the allocation of the funds?
So we'll hold it in committee and
Yeah.
continue it on tomorrow's council agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. And that concludes the agenda.
Woo-hoo, 2:30.